Welcome back to the channel, folks, and to a very different kind of video from what you're used to seeing from me. Normally you would see painting tutorials, battle reports, maybe a few completed painting reviews, those kind of things, but I've decided it's high time I let you know what goes on inside my head and show you my approach to certain aspects of the game itself, what happens in game. And the first in what I hope will be a series of videos, I'm going to focus on ambushes. So these are just my ideas, my observations, and there's so many different varied situations, experiences and so on that you can have in the game that you guys may have just as much, if not more, experience that you can share. So don't be shy. If you've got any comments, stick them down below and let's add to the debate. There's a lot of players with varying levels of experience playing this game, so this could be a good opportunity just to give them a few pointers. If you want to double check the rules on ambushes, they're on page 103. That's like in the mission special rules section. Now, the best place to start this discussion is on what are you going to use in your ambush. And that's going to be dependent on your list, your opponent's list, the mission and the terrain. That's the sort of four main factors. And you're going to be balancing all of those things to get the optimal ambush. For instance, most ambushes involve anti-tank guns, tank killers, tank destroyers or tanks. But there are situations where you might even want to be using infantry in your ambush. So consider what it is, what is the main threat from your opponent. You're going to be the defender with an ambush. So what is the main threat to the objective going to be? If somebody has a large infantry force with nothing meaningful in the way of tanks, you might want to put heavy machine guns or a hard-hitting infantry platoon in ambush. I've seen players with the pack front card putting their anti-tank guns down individually and then keeping an infantry platoon in ambush, A, to avoid ranged in markers at the start of the game, or B, to allow them a bit of flexibility in deployment because they can perhaps shift a platoon over to where the main axis of attack is going to come from. If you are doing that though, be careful, because if you're slow in getting your platoon down and there's an open objective, you might regret it. It might be too late. Otherwise, you're going to be shooting at tanks. You can do quite easy calculations, folks, just simple probabilities to see what is the most effective weapon in your arsenal against the prime target. So have a little bit of thought. Don't put a medium anti-tank weapon up against heavy tanks. If you've got medium anti-tank guns, hard-hitting tanks, well, don't stick those anti-tank guns in ambush against heavily armoured tanks. It may be the form thing to do, the expected thing to do, but stop and think about it. And one more thing on that subject is the number of weapons firing. For anti-tank, for me the optimal in anti-tank guns and tank killers and so on is 4. Anything less than 4 has got a real chance of failing. 4 or more has got a real chance of succeeding. Now let's look at missions, because missions are so key to the kind of ambush opportunities you're going to have. And the team, the platoon that you're maybe going to choose to use in the ambush. Some missions suit static ambushes very well. Other ones may suit a mobile ambush very well. Let's go and have a look at them. Breakthrough is a very good mission for placing ambushes due to the substantial size of your deployment zones, the fact that you'll be able to get flank shots as well as the attacker has to move between those deployment zones, but don't forget, protect the objectives, guys. Don't get too greedy if it means you can't cover the objective when it's being attacked. Bridgehead is one of those missions that can be very difficult to put an ambush down. First of all, the deployment zone itself is very small, so you're going to have to find something with suitable terrain to choose as your deployment zone. But that could come with costs in other respects, for fields of fire, for instance. And if your opponent's main attack, if he uses, for instance, spearhead to get down the flank, if the main attack goes in on the flank and you pop your ambush there, they then displace to somewhere else, your guns may well be stuck pointing in the wrong direction. That's where certainly a mobile ambush with vehicles might be more useful than a static ambush with anti-tank guns. Contact is a bit of a weird mission because both sides have to take on an objective, but one side is a defender. As a defender you get an ambush, and this is good in terms of selection because you can choose anywhere along, you see that blue band along the back, anywhere along there. So you can have a very, very good choice of terrain and fields of fire. Once again, don't forget about protecting objectives, but it's also worthwhile bearing in mind, depending on how much flexibility you can get in this game, you have to take an objective yourself, so you might be able to place the ambush where you can give cover and fire for any attack that you yourself are putting together. Cornered is another tricky mission. I mean, look at this and you can see your deployment zone is quite small. It's a little bit more than a quarter, which isn't very much. Not only that, you have your short end facing the enemy, which may have good terrain and may not have good terrain, so you might want to choose your quarter accordingly. But once again, you may find yourself popping in an ambush in one flank or the other, and your opponent moving their attack to the other flank, which could cause you problems of line of sight. So this might be another good mission for a more mobile unit being an ambush. Counter-attack is a really awkward mission as well because your deployment zone is not even an entire quarter. You've got that sort of 12-inch chunk taken out around the centre of the table. There could be terrain right in the middle of the table that's going to block a great deal of your line of sight, and you need to move part of your defensive force over to an adjacent quarter to defend an objective you're not even on. So this is a very tricky one. You may need your mobile elements to move, so you can't use that in an ambush, and anything you use as static in the ambush could be left facing the wrong way. So I think you just want, if you're going to be using static here, just think about where are my objectives and how am I going to hold on to them. Dogfight and No Retreat are both good missions for placing ambushes because you've got the entire width of the table and a nice deep deployment zone. So there could be good high terrain sitting further back that could be useful for your more potent and long-ranged anti-tank weapons. Just watch your opponent doesn't charge down sort of blind corridors and then make you pop your ambush and then leave that corridor so your guns have got a limited arc of fire, limited line of sight from then. But otherwise it's a very good mission for all kinds of units in ambush. Now I'm going to go through some sort of tabletop examples so you can see figures on the table, so it's not just me, and you can maybe get an idea of the situations that I'm talking about. I'm going to be starting with the ambusher before moving on to the attacker. Now, for me, a successful ambush has two qualities. It's immediate impact and enduring threat. You want your ambushing platoon to destroy its target, or if not in the first turn, then in the second turn of shooting, but then be a continuing threat against any advance by the enemy. If it gets destroyed immediately, if it's exposed to danger and you have stuck your neck out too far, well then you might be failing to get the full benefit from that ambush. And if you're the defender, you're going to want to get as much benefit as you can because there's going to be reserves and you're going to be under pressure. So you have to push that pressure back a bit. And an ambush is a great way of doing it if it can be done right. So let's look at some of those examples. You can achieve a more enduring threat from your ambush if you have some sort of screening force such as infantry in front of them to give them some support and cover from retaliatory assaults or shooting. You will get a much stronger immediate impact from your ambush if you can catch the target unit in the open and at short range. If you are having to deal with a lot of enemy tanks coming at you at one time, you can use smoke to split the enemy force in two, which means those units behind the smoke cannot just stop and then start immediately firing back at you, and they'll have to move forward, and the rate of fire will therefore be reduced, and they may even be more difficult for them to hit you if they are slow firing weapons. Wood templates are very suitable terrain for popping ambushes, but remember, to get advantage of that cover you have to have all of the vehicle or the gun base in the template. And then of course, if you are vehicle mounted, if you're mobile, after firing your ambush, it is possible to do a shoot and scoot. Get yourself out of line of sight. But just bear in mind, you will have to make a cross check, and long-barreled tank killers can find it difficult to pass those cross checks. Hills are vital terrain that both the ambusher and the ambushee should be considering. If you're on high ground and tall terrain, you can shoot at teams behind low terrain as if they were unconcealed. They get no benefit of concealment, which will give you the maximum immediate impact that you're looking for from your ambush. So ambusher and ambushee, be aware of where hills are on the table. Once you've popped your ambush, think about what support you can bring up to get the maximum impact. If you've got tanks that can reveal themselves, move them up. A blitz move is great. If not, don't worry about it. It's still, in this case for instance, 4 more dice of shooting, which not only increases your immediate impact, but it improves your enduring threat, as your opponent will have far many more targets to deal with themselves. And of course, flank shots. Don't forget, if you can hit the vast majority of your opponents on the side, it'll make a huge difference. Their armour is going to be maybe half of what they've got on the front. Set another heavies, it'll just be a bit weaker, but that may be all the difference it takes to get that impact that you need, just to get that extra kill or that extra bail to reduce the strength of that attacking unit. If you have a mobile ambushing unit and you can't get line of sight at the right opportunity for you, you can, if you want to take a bit of a risk, place yourself out of line of sight, make a blitz move and get your shots off. Now if you are German, you've also got the advantage of being able to do the shoot and scoot and get yourself back out of line of sight, but you've got to weigh up the risk of failing those dice rolls. As a defender, you must remember it's as much about holding objectives as it is about destroying the enemy's tanks. So an opportunity such as this to hit a valuable unit in the flank looks good, but will risk you not being close enough to the objective to intervene in any subsequent assault. You won't be able to get the counter fire in that would potentially drive off those tanks. So bear that in mind, folks. It's a payoff between destroying enemy teams and holding on to the objective. Ambushing at short range is optimal, but if you don't have a good screen to protect them, don't get too close if there are enemy infantry around, or you may find your immediate impact is soon negated by your failure of an enduring threat when the infantry assault you. Now, it's not all about the ambusher, there's also the ambushee. Let's just call them the attacker. To my mind, As an attacker, when I'm playing a game, I'm looking to deflect, survive, and then move on from an ambush. That's kind of how I approach it. That's when I'm moving my forces into position. So let's have a look at some examples of what I mean. Now remember that ambushes, if they're not concealed, have to be at long range. They have to be at more than 16 inches. So use screening forces, such as armoured cars in this case, to dominate suitable terrain. Move up to the edge of woods, up to or inside area templates, and that'll keep pushing the ambush back effectively, as they won't be able to get the close range shot by hiding within or behind terrain. Smoke is a limited resource, but it could be a resource that at the vital time will give you the cover that you need to be able to push on towards the objective without the concern of being hit by the ambush. But timing is vital here, folks, and you may just end up pushing the ambush back to a longer range at a later point in your advance. If you are dealing with a static ambush, such as anti-tank guns, once that ambush hits you, it is possible for your mobile forces just to run away. Those anti-tank guns could be stuck in a position which they're going to find it difficult or impossible to take another part in the game because they're slow to move themselves, or they'll become vulnerable to artillery fire as they come out of their dug in positions. So move and displace. Keep yourself behind cover as much as you can. Perhaps work out your axis of advance based on the available cover. Remember as well, it's not a race. You can stop just at an inch or two less than your maximum move if that keeps you in cover, because that will help reduce the immediate impact of the ambush on your unit. If you are approaching key ambush terrain, you might want to drop smoke range in on the place on that terrain where you think the enemy platoon will deploy. Now the smoke will protect you the following turn, and in a subsequent turn you're already ranged in there. So if your opponent decides they are going to pop the ambush because the smoke is gone, well, they're going to do it under the immediate threat of a already ranged in ambush where their anti-tank guns will be re-rolling successful saves. So that is going to, in one way, reduce the immediate impact through the smoke, and in the other way reduce the enduring threat by you already having artillery ranged in on their position. Reduce the ambush opportunities by having a narrow or a screened axis of advance. This is something I often do. There may be a town, there may be buildings, woods, areas that are going to cut you off from the other side of the defensive deployment zone. You can screen those areas which may be suitable for ambushing themselves, screen them and then push forward, therefore reducing the opportunities the defender has. Inexperienced players are sometimes guilty of not turning every gun to the ambushing unit. I've seen games where the player has fired back with the ambushed unit, but then other units have continued to fire at infantry, for instance, and they've perhaps moved potential supporting teams in a way where the fire is maybe split and it's not all concentrated on the ambusher. But turn every gun to them, move everything into position to kill the enduring threat, so the next turn there's going to be less anti-tank guns up, preferably none. Remember, most anti-tank guns have got a 3-up save, so you've got to get a lot of hits on them before you then move on to your firepower. You know, there's a lot of dice that need to be rolled, so you need to get a lot of dice on them, and that would include lifting ranged in artillery to land onto those anti-tank guns if required. Turn every gun to them. Well folks, that's it. That's my first sort of in-game how-to video for you. My principles of ambush. I will do another one as soon as I can. I've got a list put together for what I'm going to cover. A lot of you guys are going to be very familiar with the ideas that I've stuck down in this video. If you've got any that I've not put down and you'd like to share, well, stick them down in the comments below, because there's going to be a lot of new players who hopefully are going to find this kind of video instructive. That's certainly why I'm doing it, and any help in that regard from the rest of the community will be appreciated by all. So there you go folks, keep tuned for the next one of these. Thanks for watching again folks, really appreciate it, and thanks to all the subscribers out there. And if you'd like to subscribe, please do so to help us build the channel and bring more of this kind of content to people who enjoy the game. And hit the bell button folks, and then I'll see you on the next one for sure.